Good evening, all our friends and partners on Facebook and around the world. Those of you watching with us regularly as we share this recording on our different streaming services, we want to say a good welcome to you. This is Reverend Dr. Aquilus with AfriH, Africans for the Restoration of Ethics in Government. We are a nonpartisan organization just designed to harness the expertise of professional Africans and global partners that we can discuss issues significant to Africa and her well-being and how we can help Africa with counsel and with wisdom and with knowledge to improve the living conditions of Africans and to better their lives. And so we want to say a big welcome to you. The past week, we took a little mini sabbatical because we had some little scheduling things going on, but we are back. And today I'm going to be doing another teaching session concerning issues surrounding policy. And we are hoping that by next week we have a guest with us that will kind of cement more things to you regarding public policy or public administration. But tonight I want to be talking about something. I want to be talking about something that's important, and that is challenges to policy implementation. Challenges to policy implementation. Oftentimes I think you've heard by now, one of the things we keep saying on AfriH as we have these segments is that, we believe strongly that Africa, part of the issues that Africa has, as a continent is rooted in the Euro policies. It's rooted in Euro policies, and we are called to draw attention, to policy, what is policy formation, policy implementation, or policy evaluation. We are called as an organization to draw attention to these areas to help, we come alongside African leaders, African governments, and just to help them position themselves for success. Like many times you hear in the business world, talking about having a business plan, right? If you want a successful business, you must have a business plan that gives you a guideline, so it serves as a roadmap, to take you from point A to point B. Even in personal financial issues as well, we are told that, if you have a financial goal you want to accomplish, you must have a plan, right? A guideline, some steps that you follow, financial plan that you follow to get you from poverty to prosperity. And so in all segments of life, you see, you have all these different roadmaps, but when it comes to government, being successful is the same thing, the same philosophy. There has to be a roadmap. There has to be some guidelines, something that you can follow. And that thing you follow to take you to a place of success is what we call policy, right? Policy, your position statement on issues that will impact you along the way to success, along the way to having a successful government, a government that leave a great legacy, right? Great legacy and takes care of its citizens. And that's why we are here. That's why we are here. So I'm going to look at challenges to policy implementation, because it's wanting to have policies on the books. It's wanting to have a well-framed policy. It's wanting to have a well-documented policy, but it's a totally different thing to carry it out, to carry out successfully, to see it being implemented successfully. So what are some of the challenges that leaders, that governments, that public administrators have to be aware of while they embark on this journey, to implement these policies and improve the living conditions of the citizens. I will just bring a few points because the factors impacting public policies are numerous. I mean, there are just so many factors that impact public policy. So, but I'm just going to just narrow it down to about four, just to look at four basic ones. These are not, the only ones. There are so many out there, as I said, but I'm just going to narrow it down to four, just for the sake of creating awareness that these things exist, and that as governments and as leaders begin to contemplate on policies to improve the conditions of the citizens, they must take note of of these factors and guide their policy in such a way that they will avoid these pitfalls, right? Okay. So there are various factors that impact public policy implementation. The common one I want to talk about is first of all, is lack of knowledge. lack of knowledge. That is so basic, right? It is so basic when you talk about lack of knowledge, but yet it's so essential. It's so essential. And the reason is that you want to ask a question, okay? How informed are the responsible governmental agencies? How informed are they concerning the policy that are being trusted to them? I mean, how informed about this? How informed are they about the policy? Do they first of all understand that they are being trusted with something very delicate? Do they have a clue, that it's not just, get up in the morning, go to work, 8 hours, 9 hours a day and go back home? Do they have an idea? Do they have an understanding that they are being trusted to implement something that would change the trajectory of the nation? Do they understand? Do they have a comprehension of what they are being entrusted with? Do they know why? I mean, do they know why to go to work in the morning? Do they know why they are, heading these agencies? Do they understand why these agencies exist? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the knowledge that's required to serve in these agencies? Because government go time and time again and create these agencies and trust them with these policies to implement things. And time again, we see no tangible results. And we try to pinpoint where the problem is. So you look at the foundation, the people who have been trusted with these policies, those that work in these ministries, in these agencies, do they understand the role? Do they understand? Do they have a clue about the expectations? What the expectations are to serve in these capacities, to serve in these agencies, to serve in these ministries? Do they understand it? Is there some system in place that will create awareness or training for them as leaders, as agencies? On the agency level, is there a system in place to constantly bring them up to date of why they are in the capacity they are in, why they are serving these agencies, why these agencies exist? Do the employees in the agency understand the role? I mean, do they have the knowledge? Do they have the knowledge? So lack of knowledge is one major thing, one basic thing, but a major factor that would derail any policy from implementation. Lack of knowledge. You count the number of times you hear, I just go to work. I just go to work. 9 to 5, 8 to 4. I work, I put my hours in, and I come home. There's so much more to serving these agencies and to implementing these policies than many people think. And so it behooves the leadership, it behooves the leadership structure to educate the employees, to educate. In fact, it behooves the government to educate the leader what the expectations are concerning these agencies, what they expect the agencies to do with these policies that are being trusted into their hands. So leadership have to take close attention to lack of knowledge. Inform your people, educate your people. Let them know, let them have a clear understanding concerning what they are handling. Do they understand the operational guidelines concerning these, for these agencies? How it's supposed to operate? Are there benchmark? Are there quotas it's supposed to meet? Do they have knowledge of all these things? When we set up agencies in government, we provide them with guidelines. We call it job description. We provide them with ideas concerning, this is your role. This is the description of your role. This is what we expect you to do. This is what we want you to do. This is what we want you to accomplish. Do we have performance reviews to make sure that these leaders and these employees are meeting expectations? So you have to address the era of lack of knowledge. If the policy is to be implemented, you have to address lack of knowledge. Make sure people are informed that serving these agencies, that oversees these agencies, and they understand the operational guidelines entrusted to them within these policies to be implemented. Now, the second thing that affects policy implementation is what I call legal framework. Legal framework. In other words, is the policy formed within the law? Is the policies that have been formed within the guidelines of the law? Does it have strong legal grounds? Now, why is that important? It's important because, look, you can go ahead and put together some policy. It can be well written, well documented, well framed. But if it doesn't have legal grounds, if it's not supported by the law, then what happens is that anybody can challenge your policy legally. Anybody can provide a legal challenge to what you want to do. And not only there's a possibility of derailing what you want to do, but there's a possibility of putting on hold that entire policy from being implemented for a long time. So you also want to make sure, look at the legal implication. When you think about putting together policy, as a government or as an agency, look at the legal implications. If it's challenged in the court of law, do we have enough information here that challenge will lack standing? That challenge, whatever challenge is coming, will not pose a threat to implementation. Do you examine the policy, with the law that's on the books? Do you examine that? You have to do that. Because if you don't, you create a situation whereby your policy can be derailed, or your policy can be halted, or your policy can be put on hold. And when a policy that is good, but it doesn't have any legal standing, is put on hold, who suffers? The masses. Because you put together policies to help the masses, right? You put together policy to help the citizens, right? But if the policy doesn't have any strong legal backing, and someone challenges the policy, they put it on hold, and the people suffer. So as policies are being designed, we have to look at the legal implications behind the policy. Is there a stand? Is there a legal ground that can support this policy? You have to do that. You have to do that. The third area that we have to be careful with when we talk about policy implementation that could pose a risk to policy implementation is what I call social order. Social order. Now, by social order, I'm talking about, certain standards of living, certain standards of belief and behavior that's acceptable to the society. Okay, so you talk about framing policies, right? Look at the social implication as well. How will this policy impact social change? That's the question you should be asking. It doesn't matter how good the policy. The question is this: how will this policy impact social change in my country? How will this policy improve the living condition of our citizens? How will this policy improve the living condition of the masses? How will this policy, create a legacy that is positive for the administration? That's the thing you need to be thinking about. Social order. Will the policy create chaos in the social order? Will the policy create chaos? Will the policy improve the social order? You don't just pass policy because you feel like passing policies. You examine the policy in light of social order. You examine the policy in light of the impact it will have. We're looking at right now a situation going on now in the U.S., in the United States of America, concerning abortion. And we're told that over 50 years, they have Roe v. Wade. For many of you who don't know what Roe v. Wade is about, it's a legal decision that was made, a challenge in the court, a lawsuit, so to speak, concerning women's right to abortion, right? And then it was settled, so to speak, over 50 years ago. And now there was a leak, a memo, something was leaked out to the United States, the American public, that the current Supreme Court is supposed to pass a judgment after all these years that's going to literally, according to what they say, wipe out, the decision of the government to allow abortion in the nation. And so people are brewing for something, massive that would, according to what we are hearing, will impact social order negatively. Okay. So this is what I'm saying, will the policy, create a social chaos, or will it improve the living conditions? Now, I'm not making any judgment call whether the Supreme Court has ready to do it. That's not my place. I'm speaking to concerning improving conditions in Africa, but I'm just giving issues of policies and social order. Okay, as policies are being considered, within the African setting, as policies are being planned, and policies are being formed, one of the things you should consider as well is concerning its impact on social order. Now, if the policy is good for social order, even though it may rattle some feathers, well, it's actually a judgment call. Look at the pros and the cons. If it's good for the nation, if it's good for the people, even though it may not be popular, but it is a good policy. We need to do it because it have these benefits. And you got to make sure you have all the benefits, because you got to sell it to the public that they will believe in your policy. So if it's beneficial, even though it may ruffle some feathers, then you got to make sure the good exceeds the bad, so to speak. The benefits exceeds the risk, and then you educate the public on it. That even though you may not like it, but you know what? It is good for the country. It is good for the community. It is good for the nation. Okay, so social order should be taken into consideration as well when you're thinking about passing policies or forming policies. How will it impact the citizenry? How will it improve their living condition? I think for me, the bottom line is this, how will it improve the living condition of my people? I think that should be the foundational reason by which we're talking about passing policies or implementing policies. How will this policy improve like the living condition of the citizens? How will it improve social order? Nothing wrong with change. I believe in change. There are times you have, maybe there's a policy that existed 100 years ago that I think, on the boats going on, but now, we're in the 21st century. And as you look at that policy based on present conditions, you know that that policy is obsolete. And so it need to be improved, or it need to be, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But just make sure the benefits exceeds the risk that will pose to the society, to the social order, and be able to communicate that clearly to the citizens. So when you talk about policy formation, implementation, please also consider social order. How will it impact social order? And then, as I said, just 4 points. The fourth point I want to bring about here when we talk about challenges to policy implementation, the fourth point here is poor system of enforcement. Poor system of enforcement. Now, this is another important thing, because the policy can be good. You can form the policy well written, well documented, and everything. But if the people you trust the policy with, they don't have the skills, they don't have the resources, or they don't have the will to carry it out, then it's going to be a failed policy. It's going to be a failed policy. So the system of enforcement, you have to look at the system of enforcement as you put together these policies and giving it to agencies for implementation. Make sure that those that are being trusted with these policies, understand how to enforce it. Make sure they understand that it's something of value. See, again, it comes with education. You have to educate people that you are in this ministry, you are in this agency to fulfill this. You have to have these expectations down. You have to, it should be clear that they understand it, and always reinforce that to them. Reinforce that to them, that it will stay on course concerning your policy and the implementation of your policy. Have a program to examine whether they're on the right course, whether they're on the right track, whether they're following the rules, whether they're performing the rules according to the script. Have a system of reviews, performance reviews. Because oftentimes it seems as if, when it comes to the African setting, it seems as if many times as we look in, as we examine things, we see that sometimes people just don't know that it has something of value. People just don't know they have something of value entrusted to them. So they treat it as their personal property rather than as something that you are there to serve the public. It's my position, it's my power, it's my, you don't think about it in terms of, I'm serving the public, I'm serving this administration in this capacity. What I do here will impact the legacy of this administration. Oftentimes we don't see that in Africa. Okay, so again, look at your system of enforcement. Do you have a good system in place to enforce this policy? Do they have the resources they need? Do they have the funding they need? Do they have the training and the expertise they need to effectively carry out this policy that it will be a success? You know, when we talk about poor system enforcement, someone was telling me recently about an African country where they're struggling with the era of immigration, and people just come in and from other countries just come in and use money and buy the passport, and use the passport now, to do things around the world, to travel in the name as if they're citizen of that country. And the thought comes about, I mean, if that is true, because it's not verified, but if that is true, that it speaks volume to what we're talking about here. That people within this agency, within that agency, immigration, do not fully understand why they're there. Do not fully understand why they're there. And so if you don't understand why you are there, then there's the room for abuse. I mean, do you think twice what it means to give passport to someone who is a non-citizen of your nation? Do you think of the future implication? I mean, what impact that could have on a nation negatively in the future? Do you think about that? If you understand why you are called to serve in the immigration capacity, as an employee or as a leader, then you understand that, that passport is a treasured document. And it doesn't matter whoever comes with how much money they come, I must protect it. Because it's the identity of the nation, I must protect it. Okay? But if we don't have a strong system of enforcement, if the system of enforcement is poor, then we create scenarios whereby people will not understand the value of the job, the value of the position, and then they will just go into the gray areas and create, and abuse the power, and allow people to kind of just rig the system. You can't allow that to happen. You cannot allow that to happen. So if you think about policy implementation, you also must look at the systems of enforcement you have in place. Make sure it's not a poor system of enforcement. Make sure employees understand that they're there to enforce the law. They enforce your policy, and they'll be held accountable, for how they enforce the policy or how they do not enforce that policy. They will be held accountable. You have to do that because, again, it's the legacy of your administration or whatever administration you are serving. It is their legacy that you have in the balance based on your decisions within these agencies or ministries. So look at your system of enforcement, okay, because it poses a challenge or risk policy implementation. Now, so those are just the 4 ones I want to just talk about tonight for us to think about, because all these, and there are many more, but these are all loopholes that have to be addressed. These are loopholes that have to be addressed while making policy decisions, while forming policies. You have to consider these loopholes. The people that will have the policies, are they knowledgeable? Do they understand what they're handling, what they're going to be handling? Is there a legal framework for this policy that it will not be challenged in court, or even if it's challenged, we can overcome that challenge? Does the policy improve social order, or does it bring chaos into social order? Is the system of enforcement strong? That there'll be no abuse. Is the system of enforcement strong to implement these policies? And why do we get consideration of these 4 things and all the other ones that may come up? Is because of one thing that is so important, and that is the occurrence of what we call failed policies. As an administration in Africa, you never want to hear that you had a failed policy. Why is that important? Why is that important? Because when a policy fails, or when it's known that this administration had a failed policy, it's a sign of weakness politically. It takes away political capital from you. It takes it away. It distracts from what you want to accomplish. It tells your citizen that there was not careful planning done when this policy was being formed. There was not careful consideration done. They didn't examine all the things that you have to examine when we're putting this policy together. So you don't want to have to say, this is a failed policy. It's an eyesore. It's an embarrassment for your administration. And when the agency, I mean, that's an F, so to speak. Why did the policy fail? Is it the government, or is it the agency that had the policy that caused it to fail? So you address all these loopholes to avoid having failed policies. Because every time, now listen to this, every time a policy fails, you know who suffers? The citizens suffer. The citizens suffer. Because the policy was to accomplish something to help them. The policy was to accomplish something to better their lives. And it just failed. So now you got to go back to the table, re-examine things, put together something more concrete, something more substantial, something more you know, that you will still be more successful, and bring it back to them. Then the question, why did the last one fail? So you got to explain why the last one failed, and then you got to explain why this time you got it right. You know, you want to avoid all those situations. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid that all means. Failed policy shows that you don't know what you are doing, and it also shows that you are being wasteful because you just wasted money and time on something that didn't work. On something that didn't work. So you want to avoid failed policies at all costs. You want to avoid them. And so the best thing to do is that you sit down, as you put together policies, you look at all these factors that may impact your policy, that pose risk to your policies. Lack of knowledge, legal framework, social order, you know, poor system enforcement. You look at all these areas, these factors, and you make sure you address them while you put together, while you frame it, while you form your policy. So that when you deliver it to implementation, you know that if it doesn't work, if that policy fails in the hands of that agency, it is not the policy maker's fault. It is the agency that didn't carry out as planned according to the guidelines in the policy. Right. So we want to encourage you as leaders and as, you know, policy makers and public administrators, you know, let this segment be an encouragement to you. That you continue to work your best to make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your I's as you put together policy for implementation. And look at factors that will affect your implementation and address those factors within the policies so that you can have a successful administration and you can have a successful legacy. And more importantly, your people can be blessed, and they can enjoy good quality of life because of the decisions you are making when it comes to policy implementation. We'll stop right here. I want to thank you again for joining me. Again, this is Reverend Dr. Aquilus Riggs. Hopefully next week we have someone else to come and speak to us. If not, we have something good for you as well. But all in all, we want to leave you with the motto of our organization: doing better by doing right. We believe Africa can do better if she simply does right. Have a good night, everybody. See you next week, Monday at 8 o'clock.